Hello, welcome back. Thank you for joining me today. We're going through here on this series of videos the text of A Course in Miracles, and it's always fun and always useful, really, to stop and take a pause to address specific questions here along the way, because after all, the text is still going to be there when we resume it. It's not going anywhere. So it's always instructive to have a conversation about ideas and questions that are coming up for you. So before we launch into it today, this is an open invitation to everyone. If you have a specific question, please let me know here in the comment thread. And it can be related to A Course in Miracles specifically or spirituality in general. So, yes, either one, all questions are good. So, the topic of conversation today is the directive from the Holy Spirit. So, a bit of backdrop. The question is if I would be willing to share how I personally received the directive from the Holy Spirit to teach. And of course, the answer is most definitely I will. And we'll talk about that today. The backdrop is that we're always teaching. This is a prominent idea that runs throughout the course, that we're always teaching and we're always learning simultaneously. In fact, they're one and the same. To give and to receive are one in truth. To teach and to learn, same deal. So this applies whether we take on a role in the world that looks like a teacher or an instructor, a professor, a trainer, or not. It doesn't make any difference because we're always interacting with each other. That is the case no matter what. Even if you hole yourself up in a dark room, walk into the closet, close the closet door, make sure all the lights are off, and attempt to hide, you're still teaching and you're still learning from all of us. Why? Well, there's no separation of any kind. And no matter where you go, dark closet or a crowded city, a crowded place full of people, you always meet yourself. Always. There is no separation of any kind. We're always teaching and we're always learning. What are you teaching? That's the question. It's the question for each and every one of us all the time, every moment of every day. Are you teaching the thought system of the Holy Spirit and extending that to your brother? Are you extending love? In other words, are you sharing the Holy Spirit with your brother? Or are you sharing the continued thought of separation, division, hatred, warfare, and all of that stuff? That's that's the question. And along the way, we all teach differently. Now, the differences are simply differences of form. So, as I often say, my own directive was to, and is, in fact, to turn on the camera, which sits right above this screen here, and the microphone, which is right over here, and broadcast the Holy Spirit worldwide. That is my own personal directive, and I'll talk about how I received that and continue to receive that. Yours may look very, very differently. So it's very, very important here. This is an important lesson for all of us not to compare, not to indulge in comparative reality and think that our role is less than somebody else's. It's very easy to do that in the world, and our media systems, our media structures, our societies, our economic systems set us up to do this and to feel really badly about ourselves because here's somebody who appears to be living a glamorous life, and here we are doing our thing. By comparison, it doesn't look very important at all. And we fall into that trap over and over again. We've all done it. Understand that your directive will be very different from mine. Probably. I mean, maybe not. But in all likelihood, we're all going to have what looks on the surface of things like a very different teaching role. Again, you don't have to hold yourself out as a teacher, instructor, or a trainer in any capacity in order to continue to teach and to share the Holy Spirit. You'll be given the opportunities to do so in your own life, within the context of your own life, as you've got it set up, as it is currently constituted and arranged. Right here in the present moment, you will get each and every teaching opportunity. And it may be that you're simply directed to say hello to somebody in a given moment. Smiling at your neighbor is just as miraculous as walking on water. There's no order of difficulty in miracles, which is very important to realize. The first sentence of chapter 1 of the text. There is no order of difficulty in miracles. They're all the same. They are literally each and every one of them the same. What we look upon as difference is simply a difference in form. The content, the essence, heart of the matter is exactly the same. You're sharing the Holy Spirit with everybody is necessarily going to look different than my sharing the Holy Spirit with everybody and your neighbors sharing the Holy Spirit with everybody. And it's going to appear to change moment to moment, appear to change. The core, the essence of it is exactly the same. We're not taught this in the world, so we repeat it. And then we return and repeat it all over again. I know. Yeah. Spiritual practice is like that, regardless of the tradition. So, quite naturally, a self study curriculum like this course is going to be like that too. So, how did I get this directive? Well, here's some backdrop. I grew up in not one, but two fundamentalist Christian traditions. And by fundamentalist, I mean our building is the only building, your building is wrong. That kind of thinking. So, over the years, you can most certainly say that has produced multiple forgiveness opportunities. And the very first of these churches my parents left when I was young. The second, which my mom got us involved in, got my sister and me involved in, when I was about, I would say, about 10 years old. I left that when I got my driver's license at age 15 and would tell my mom that I had a very interesting, riveting discussion at Sunday school that I never went to because I went out for a hike or for coffee or something like that. And I think she probably never really believed me, most likely, but she let that one go. And I've studied other spiritual traditions too. I spent quite a bit of time studying and practicing Buddhism, so I'm familiar with the Eastern philosophy, with those traditions, um, specifically the Karma and Shangpa Kagyu lineages of Tibetan Buddhism. For those of you who are Buddhists yourself, or you're drawn to that or familiar with it, it's very, very interesting because this course found me in 2013. I had barely heard of A Course in Miracles despite a lifetime of interest, deep interest in spirituality. So I can say 100% unequivocally that spiritual practice, spirituality has been the focal point of my entire life. Nothing, and I do mean nothing, has drawn my attention more. Nothing has mattered as much at all. There is not even a close second. Not even travel is a close second. Not even nice green olive oil and garlic is a close second. None of that. Yeah. There's been a clear focus. No matter what jobs I've held, no matter what I've done for work and things like that. So the course found me in 2013, and I realized right away that I was going to study and practice this course, and it was going to form the basis, the focal point of my spiritual practice. And it pretty much took over. It's very interesting because if you're familiar with Western traditions like Christianity and Judaism and Eastern traditions like Hinduism, like Buddhism, this course is going to feel really, really familiar. It is. It's going to feel very familiar to you because it has elements of both, and it's very much like both. The terms Holy Spirit, God, those of us that were raised in Western traditions will be very familiar with that, or even Western societies, whether you were raised as a Christian or Jewish or not. It doesn't make any difference. You're familiar with those terms. Just living in places like Western Europe and Australia and the United States and Canada, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah. The term ego is from Eastern philosophy. And a lot of the ideas in this course will be deeply familiar to those familiar with Eastern philosophy. It brings them all together. And that really resonated with me. So I embarked on the study and practice of the course. 2013, I realized right away that I was going to have to really forgive. I think you can relate, if you've been doing this, to the resistance to truly forgiving because we want to hold on to our grudges and all of that. But by repeating the workbook lessons, by practicing, by putting these ideas into practice, I realized, okay, well, I'm going to have to forgive. Specifically, I'm going to have to forgive my abusive alcoholic mother, which I did. And I did that without, by the way, having any kind of a speaking or even texting relationship with her the final 2 years of her life before she passed away in 2016. I was able to forgive her and let all of my own baggage go around decades of psychological and emotional abuse. So that's a story for another time that I've told here, and I'd be more than happy to share in detail again, because as of right now, this moment, that has been the biggest forgiveness lesson of this lifetime. So for me, in 2018, we'll fast forward, something very, very interesting and a forgiveness opportunity, something that you'll find really familiar, perhaps, happened to me. I had been working in the travel industry from about 2014 to the end of 2017. I was working in the travel industry as a tour guide, as a tour director, and most often as a host with an international travel club. And I was sent on location to host their members, their clients, right? Members, members of the travel club in specialized trips on location. So I was flown around, of course, at the company's expense to places like Cancun, Costa Rica, the Caribbean, all over the United States and Canada, Mexico, places like that. It was a very, very interesting and very fun job. And it was working for a company. Here's the thing about working for a company or a corporation or anything that is in the corporate arena. We often have this perception that, okay, well, that's solid, it's fixed and lasting. We have this idea in the world. We want things to be solid and fixed and lasting in the world. There is no world. What is solid and fixed and lasting here? The only thing that's real is love, God, the only reality, who we are. So when we latch on, attach, Buddhists, attachment to something that we want to be fixed and lasting, suffering, disturbance. Why? Nothing lasts, including corporate jobs. So, along with several of my colleagues, at the end of 2017, I was no longer on the schedule. I would be scheduled for trips ahead of time so I could purchase the airfare with a company credit card, of course, and arrange the travel so I could be on location and take care of the guests, et cetera, et cetera. That was work. Corporate reshuffling resulted in mass layoffs, my own job included, and then several of my colleagues at the same time. And the funny part about all of this is this can happen at any time. If you have a corporate job and it seems fixed and lasting, what about if the company has a shakeup? Each and every one of us is deeply expendable. I know. You may think it's not going to happen, but sometimes it does. And it happened to me. The forgiveness opportunities were rampant, of course. And here it was, the end of 2017, where I wasn't on the schedule. And, well, my wife, Cindy, and I were spending time in Mexico. We had sold our home in Western Oregon at the end of 2017, and we're spending New Year's in Playa del Carmen with my two kids and just having a nice New Year's. And I just noticed that I wasn't on the schedule, and I wasn't on the schedule, and nobody responded to my email. In other words, nobody had the decency, there are many other words for that, to email me back, respond to my email at all, or call me up and say, you're fired. Nobody did that. And I found myself later on in January 2018 having to force the issue. It's running, I had to run the show and set up the meeting where they explained to me that I was unceremoniously fired and dumped and couldn't even really give a good reason why, which was annoying and a forgiveness opportunity. I actually felt badly for the people that had to get on the phone and have the conversation. I mean, perhaps you've been there. And even if you're familiar with management or middle corporate management, or you are a boss with employees, the hiring and firing component is difficult. It is because you're dealing with a human being, well, what appears to be a human being. This is A Course in Miracles, remember? You're not a body. You're dealing with somebody's life. So that was where I found myself. Now, we were still in Playa del Carmen, and we had been renting an Airbnb near the beach. We exchanged that and rented an Airbnb, an apartment in town, which was cheaper and all of that. And I was suddenly out of work. The apartment complex had a rooftop pool, a wading pool and the gym and a nice deck with a view of well of surrounding buildings and the jungle. It was on the edge of town in Playa del Carmen, which is on the Caribbean coast of Mexico. It's south of Cancun. Specifically, it's between Cancun and Tulum on the Caribbean, if you're not familiar with it. Very nice place. But anyway, one day in January, I was just wading in the wading pool, and I had a thought, a spontaneous thought: teach a course in miracles. Very clear, very clear, and leaving no doubt as to the source of the thought, the Holy Spirit. Very clear. And I had the instant feeling that, yes, I was meant to do this. I've always known. Yes. So the way that began was by setting up a blog that I had for a couple of years and posting articles about that, about A Course in Miracles. And then I began, as we would travel back and forth from Mexico to Western Oregon, where my youngest son lives and where all of Cindy's family resides, all of them. She's the only one that doesn't live in Western Oregon. And so we would travel back and forth. We still do. Back then, 2018, we did a lot more extensively. And I began to reach out to a local spiritual center in the town of McMinnville, Oregon, to conduct in-person workshops about A Course in Miracles, which I did, and then led a study group, which was in person and then virtually. And so we were involved in that for a while. And in 2021, fast forward, I received the invitation from Enlightened World Network, which is a spiritual themed, spiritually related online platform. So I received an invitation to teach A Course in Miracles there. That is where this series of videos began. This was January of 2021, which means they've been going on for 3.5 years. It began as a live stream, a daily live stream. And because A Course in Miracles has the workbook for students with 365 lessons, in other words, ideas that we study and put into practice, the idea was to do a daily live stream, which I did. And about 6 months into the live stream, we made the decision to have everything pre-recorded, and I began to post it on my personal YouTube as well as on Enlightened World Network, where these videos still appear as well. So actually, if you're ever curious to sift through 1.2 thousand videos, more or less, the earlier live streams have been edited and placed back on this channel. There's a lot of videos because A Course in Miracles is ongoing. And along the way, you all have joined me and subscribed, and I thank you for that. And especially for your dedication and commitment to your spiritual practice, which is without a doubt the highest and best offering you can give anyone, anywhere, anytime. There is no close second. Nothing comes close in importance to that. So for that, I thank you most definitely. So that's kind of the summary, and I know it may seem long-ish, of my own directive, which continues. My own directive continues to teach. I live in the Phoenix, Arizona area, and there is a monthly workshop that I teach on the third Monday of every month in person in Tempe, Arizona, at a location called the Shrine of Holy Wisdom. I guess if you're ever in Arizona on the third Monday of any given month at 7:30 p.m., you can find me there. There's that. And there have been, in fact, numerous other requests in the last year or two to teach in other forums. So that's ongoing. How will that look? Well, I don't know. It's going to be a directive from the Holy Spirit. And what will that look like? I don't know. A common question that we all have, especially starting out, maybe, is how do I know if I'm listening to the Holy Spirit or it's the constant chatter of the ego? Well, the Holy Spirit speaks to us continually and in many ways. You may get an idea, like I was wading in the kiddie pool, got an idea, teach a course in miracles that was clear, crystal clear. You just know. It could be an idea or something that somebody says, something that you read, perhaps in a book, on a billboard, on your social media feed, something that reminds you of who and what you really are. Something clear, right? It could be anything. The Holy Spirit communicates to us in many different ways. And differentiating between the Holy Spirit and the ego can be confusing at first. And perhaps as you go on, sometimes there'll be moments where you just don't know. Well, ask. And let's all pay attention too to how we feel. If we feel terrible, it's the ego. If we feel frustrated, like we're continuing to do the same thing over and over again, and a pervasive sense of dread creeps in, that's the ego. Dissatisfaction is the ego. Repetition of the same drama that we don't like and frustrates us and depresses us, ego. Anything that is not wholly and completely joyous, crystal clear and certain, with a sense of, oh yeah, I've always known, is the ego. The crystal clear, I've always known, it's joyous and certain, that's the Holy Spirit. And the more that you personally practice this awareness in the present moment, the more you'll be able to recognize what is the voice for God, i.e., the Holy Spirit, and what's the ego voice, the constant chatter that wants us to keep doing the same thing over and over again in different forms with the same result. So, I hope that this has been a helpful conversation for you. We're always teaching, and what we teach depends on which voice we listen to, which teacher we're learning from, the Holy Spirit or the ego, and that is our choice in the present moment. And just because we know which one to choose doesn't mean we'll always choose it. So when you notice yourself choosing the ego, judgment, frustration, fear, and blame, forgive whatever appears in your life, whatever's coming up in your experience, and return to the thought system of the Holy Spirit. Catch yourself, forgive. Catch yourself, forgive, extend love. Catch yourself again, forgive, extend love. It's like a living, breathing meditation where you notice that you get carried away. Bring your awareness back to the present moment, to your relationship with our inner teacher. The Holy Spirit is not outside you, inner teacher, part of our mind, always there, always speaking to us, always accessible. The question, do we grant it access? Do we listen? The Holy Spirit's always speaking to us. Are we listening? So I thank you for joining me. This is the subscription button right here. Go ahead and click that, hover over that. You'll be prompted to subscribe and join us. And again, several videos appear each week. Questions are more than welcome. We're going through the text of A Course in Miracles, but this is a perfect example of, yeah, let's take a pause and talk about something that you want to ask. Let's do that because I'm very, very interested in my role as a guide for you in what's coming up live. Okay. So thank you so much. And I will talk to all of you very soon.